Good morning. Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining. Hopefully, you've got your coffee. Welcome to Morning Brew You. I love this little coffee cup. Hi, everybody. I am Alicia Smith, founder of Roots and Returns and creator of this incredible space, the Healing Table. Now, whether you're live, you're in the room with me right now. Thank you so much for coming this early in the morning. Depending on what coast you're on, it's early or you're slowly getting your day going. Or if you're watching the recording later, so glad that you found your way to us. I'm so grateful that you made space for yourself to explore this important and tender topic, honoring grief without judgment. Now, so often in our day to day, we give to everybody else, right? We give to the kiddos and work. Oh boy, don't we give to work? Okay. We do all this for everybody else, and then you get to the end of the day and you're like, "Wait, what about me?" Or maybe you don't even think about you, or maybe you don't think that there's any time for you, whatever the case may be. This is a dedicated time just for you. We'll do this a couple times a week just so you can have a space that's just yours. If you can stay with us for the whole time, that's cool. If you can't, that's fine too. We're just glad that you're here. So let's begin with an affirmation to ground ourselves as we step into this space together. Why don't you take your hand and put it over your heart with a deep breath and repeat after me. I honor my grief as part of my humanity. I am allowed to feel. Take a moment to let that sink in. Maybe you even you close your eyes or you took some really deep breaths. Consider repeating it silently to yourself. Honor my grief as a part of my humanity. I am allowed to feel. You get to feel all the things that you feel. Now, if you found your way to us and you've been curious about what does that mean, the healing table, and in some of my other videos, you've seen me talk about toxic positivity. When folks, and here's the thing, grief is such a universal experience, but it is really deeply personal. And the things that you might be grieving, certainly it could be the loss of dear family members, right? That's tough. But there are also other levels of grief. There's invisible grief. If you if you're new here, then you may not know my story. I experienced was so excited about starting this life. I was married and very excited about having a baby and building a family, which surprisingly, growing up, I wasn't that type of gal who was like, I'm gonna get married, I'm gonna have this amount of kids. And I didn't have those dreams of a wedding or of a family, but I found myself married. I was hanging out with all these married friends. And as they begin to have build families, I thought, man, that sounds amazing. I'd like to do that too. And then went on the journey to have children. And so went through the process of IUI with the fertility specialist and super excited. One of the things that they tell you is that you may not get pregnant the first time, and that's okay. So I'm like, I'm fine. Second time, no problem. Third time being getting pregnant, okay, what's going on? The fourth time that I didn't get pregnant, I was really just willing to say, let's give up. But I'd purchased this bulk purchase of vials, right? And if you know anything about the fertility process, then you know what I'm talking about. So I could just let this stuff go to waste. So I'm like, all right, I'll give it another shot and got pregnant. When I tell you I was over the moon, excited, And everything now became about this pregnancy, right? Because like, baby is here. My spouse and I at the time started now well, we had an amazing life, beautiful home. We had a couple homes at this point, and my spouse at the time had a successful business. We both had full-time jobs, like life was good. So here we are ready to purchase another house, right? But this house is gonna be our forever home for baby. Because the house that we had at the time, it just wasn't big, beautiful home. But I don't know, it just didn't have the thing that we wanted it to have for a baby. So we started building this whole life around baby and looking at school districts and then wanting to find a home in said school district. Long story longer. It was just an amazing experience I shared with my mom and my brother, and we had this cool baby reveal, those cool baby announcement videos that you see on YouTube. We had one of those. And just as we were about to announce to the world that we were pregnant, I lost the baby. Oh, it's been a while ago, but it's still tough. So I lost baby and I lost it. But because all of my dreams were wrapped in this baby, right? Like this new home that we are actively searching for. Like our good friend with the realtor, we're looking at homes. We're deciding what neighborhood we want to be in. Fell in love with the neighborhood, waiting for a house to just become available. There was this whole past. My brother had just had his first baby or second. Maybe he'd had my second baby at the time. He'd had their second baby, something like that. Whatever the case may be, I was excited because now my baby would be it'd be my first baby, my mom's third grandchild. Like it was just this whole life. And I feel like all that was ruined and I did it. It's my fault. I ruined this. Completely blame myself, lost all hope. And so when I talk about grief, yes, it is a universal experience, but it is truly deeply personal to you. And my hope is that today and every day that you're with me, we can really explore how to hold space for our emotions without guilt or shame and all of that cruddy dud junk that I had for myself. Because I was the only person that blamed for myself. I was the only person that I blamed. And so so when you're thinking about grief, certainly it's the loss of loved ones who've been in our lives for our whole life, and it is devastating to lose them. But there's also invisible grief. They're the folks who are grieving and nobody knows because you can't see what they lost, right? So if you can't see what they lost, you don't know that they're still sad. And one of the things that in a lot of these chats, I talk about toxic positivity. People really mean well. But when you want to know what people said to me over and over again, oh, it's okay, Alicia. You got pregnant once, you can get pregnant again. Um, you're still young, which I really wasn't. And a good thing that you lost the baby so early. You couldn't before you could grow attached. Like, what? Do you have any idea how connected I was to for me? Like, this was a huge deal, like I wanted the whole process. I wanted to be big and pregnant and have the big photo shoot, and all that was gone. So when I'm talking about invisible grief, I'm talking about all the things that we can't see. I'm talking about the folks who've been divorced. I later was divorced, right? And so went through not just one miscarriage, then a miscarriage right after that, and then divorce. But when I'm talking about invisible grief, I'm talking about those folks too, who folks might say, it was, you were in, why are you grieving something that, oop, why, you guys can't see this, but why are you grieving something that wasn't good for you anyway, because all your dreams are wrapped up in that idea of whatever it is, right? So whether you're grieving divorce or you're separated and you're grieving the spouse that you're in a relationship with, maybe you're grieving a loss of self. Maybe you're not who you want to be, who you used to be, who you thought you'd be at this point in your life. Yeah, it's tough. So here in this space, I want to hold space for you, hold space for your emotions without guilt, without shame. And I want you to leave this space with a sense of permission to honor your grief in ways that feel meaningful to you. I want us to all honor our grief in ways that feel really meaningful to us. So let's talk about why we judge ourselves for grieving. We'd love to hear your thoughts about this. So we're going to start by talking about why we often judge ourselves for grieving. Like, why do we even get into that space? You know what I'm saying? You know that it's not good for you, and yet you still get into this space. Have you ever caught yourself thinking things like, I should be over this by now? Why am I still sad about it? Oh, my dear sweet friend, she broke up with her person. Maybe it's been 4, 5, 6 years ago. Still is in deep grief about that. And so folks have said to her, "You're being too emotional. It's over by now." But if you're still sad about it, you're still sad about it. So let's talk about it. So I know this is something I know that I've certainly experienced. And it's not because we're weak. It's not because we're flawed. It's not because there's something wrong with us. It's because we live in a world that it doesn't always make space for grief. You ever thought about that? I was recently I was recently working with someone who had a family member pass away, and naturally their job was like, okay, take the time that you need. And after a week, they were calling them saying, hey, what's up? Or when are you coming back in? And she said, I just lost my dear loved one. And her manager had the nerve to say, yeah, but wasn't that about a week and a half ago? There's this thing. The world doesn't really make space for grief. I think folks get uncomfortable with grief. I think they don't know what to do. They don't have to move through it. They don't know how to move around it. It's just and so I don't know. It's like there's this timeline for grief. So we're taught to push through it, right? We're taught to move on, stay productive. Oh, don't you want to still be here at work? That'll be good for you. It'll help. I've even had coworkers who said after losing parents, I've had coworkers who said being busy is good for me. It helps me to keep my mind off of things. But grief doesn't really work that way. It's not something that you can check off of your to-do list. And yet so many of us carry this guilt and this shame for not grieving the right way or for taking too long to grieve. Come on now. So what I want to remind you today is that there is no timeline for grief. There's no rule book. It's messy. It's unpredictable and it is deeply human. Because that's what we are. We are human. So when we're having a human experience, it's like we want to now become robotic and quickly move through it, move on with it, and check it off. So now another thing that I've learned is that grief is not linear. It doesn't follow a straight path from pain to healing. If it did, wouldn't we all just be all right? Yeah, exactly. Exactly. You might feel okay one day and then you might feel completely overwhelmed the next day. Yes. You might feel joy. You might feel joy and sadness at the same time, right? And that's all right. It's okay. It doesn't mean that you're doing it wrong. It doesn't mean that you just don't have it right. You don't have the right tools. It just means that you're human. And so for me, the most unexpected lessons about grief came during that chapter that I talked to you about. That chapter of my life, experiencing one miscarriage after the other. And then I went through this incredibly difficult separation from my spouse at the time. And then we got divorced. What? That's not supposed to happen. I remember feeling so lost and broken. So look at me right now. Even in this moment, I'm trying to rush myself through pain because I don't want to hold you up. I don't want to hold y'all up. I want to get us to our breakout rooms. I don't want to hold you up. And yet I am rushing myself. Um, I can't stop doing it. I I'm gonna hold space for myself right now. And I invite you to check in with your own self and close your eyes. Go off camera if you need to. Hand over your heart in a deep breath. Release. Thank you for that. Sometimes you gotta thank yourself. Thank you, Alicia. I was feeling really broken and was feeling really lost. And I remember hearing it wasn't dramatic, right? It just was like this voice that said, "Go bake." And I know it was my grandmother. And here I am. I found myself, I'm in the kitchen. Wasn't really sure why. I wasn't really sure what. Okay, so you said go bake. What now? I'm in the kitchen and I needed to do something with my hands, something that felt grounding. And um, I started making cakes. I just, I'm in there mixing and crying and mixing. And it wasn't just sadness, it was everything. I was mad. And yet I was in love. And I was longing for the baby I'd lost and the marriage I was losing. And I also had gratitude because even in that moment, I still had hope because it was baking had become this ritual for me and this way of processing my emotions without words. It's just a way to honor what I'd lost, and not just in that current moment, but it really transformed into this space where I was honoring everything, everyone that I'd lost. And so that's the thing about grief. It can show up in unexpected places, it can show up in unexpected moments. And sometimes the most healing thing that we can do is simply to just let it be. I'd like to invite you to reflect on this for yourself. Yes. What's one food or ritual that helps you honor your grief? What's one food or ritual that helps you honor your grief? You may really have to think about that because this may be new to you. This may not be something that you've done before. Um, it certainly helped me. So maybe it's a dish. It might be a dish that reminds you of someone that you've lost. Maybe it's a quiet moment and you light a candle in your home or at your altar, or it's journaling or just sitting still with your emotions. Take a moment and think about that. If you got your pen and pad next to you, take a moment to write that down. What's coming up for you? Now, if you'd like to, you want to share your thoughts either in the chat or come off mute, you're welcome to share with us. We will grow to be the folks that you trust. I hope that you feel that this is the space for it. You can also keep that share in your journal. You can share in the comments. You could also find someone that you trust and share with. I mean, keeping this in mind, that grief doesn't look the same for everyone, and that's all right. The important thing is about finding what feels meaningful to you. So as we wrap up our morning brewing you, I just want to again just thank you so much for sharing this space with me. And I want to encourage you. I want to encourage you to try something this week. Okay. This is what I like you to do. Think about a dish, a dessert, a casserole, whatever it is that represents someone or something you're grieving. Think about a dish, it represents someone or something that you're grieving. It could be a favorite recipe of your loved one, your grandma, your auntie, or just something, anything that reminds you of them. It doesn't just have to be food. When you're ready, I want you to take time to prepare that dish. Now, as you cook, allow yourself to feel whatever comes up, whether it's sadness or joy or something in between. Now, it's not about fixing your grief. I just, I thought someone commented that the other, was it yesterday? Maybe, I don't know. I was on a call and someone bust me slam out. Bacon can't fix my grief, Alicia. That's not what this is about. This is not about fixing your grief. It's not about making your grief go away. Grief is a journey. It's about honoring it. It's about making space for it. It's about reminding yourself that your emotions are valid. Yours, yes, yours. They're valid. So before we close, I'd like to leave you with another journaling prompt to explore on your own this week. What does honoring my grief look like right now? What does honoring my grief look like right now? There's no right or wrong answer to this. Just let yourself write whatever comes to mind. Thank you so much for being here with me today and for allowing yourself to hold space for your grief, for yourself, others. Thank you. Remember, you are allowed to feel, you are allowed to heal in your own time, in your own way. All right, I'll see y'all next time. Now, if you're watching the recording and you want to stay connected with us, click the link below so that you can follow us, stay connected with us. Consider coming to the healing table and joining us in the membership, in the free membership. We would love to have you. We'd love to hear from you. It's a space that you can share whatever you want, whenever you want, any doggone way that you want. All right? Peace and light, y'all.